Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to another episode of Whistle Talk. Today we are going to be diving into the rules game, diving into the NFHS rules book. But before we begin and before I introduce my guest, my returning guest, once again, asking all those people that are out there enjoying the show, go out, hit those like buttons, hit those subscribe buttons. The next couple episodes, make sure you hit that share button. We're going to get the word out there because today and over the next couple of weeks, going to be diving into the different rules in our NFHS rule book. I got to give credit before we even begin. Mr. Tommy Barlow, our cadet supervisor here in New Jersey, and our short chapter was the one that put together these slideshows that I'm going to be presenting. So, Tommy, got to give a shout out to you. Did a lot of the back work, and he uses this in the cadet class. And I'm kind of piggybacking off of it to steal it, to share with you all out there. And with that, I have with me from the coaching side, Mr. Daniel Chamberlain. Daniel, what's happening, buddy? How you doing?
What's up, Mike? Man, another great day here in the off season. Just about to be spring football for us Southerners who love football so much we do it year round. And getting our kids ready, getting the programs ready. Excited to talk a little rules. I don't know if you guys know or not, but I have definitely I started talking with Mike. I guess it was early last year about this time. And there are some rules out there to be weaponized if you know what you're doing. So I have dug into the rule book a little bit myself. More, that means I text Mike whenever I have referee questions or rules questions, say, Mike, what's the thing here? And we've weaponized it. So I appreciate you letting me come on and work through this rule book with you as I find more things I can take advantage of.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the overall goal with what I'm going to be doing through the next, it's going to take us a couple of weeks with this, is to get it out there for not only for us fellow officials and stuff like that, who sometimes taking the time to dive back into the rule book, to sit there and read the rule book. I mean, life, like we talked about, sometimes gets in the way, but also for the coaches that are out there too. We're going to go through this rule one. There's up to 10 rules that we're going to discuss through the course of multiple shows. And it's there for, well, hopefully it's going to be up there for a while for the coaches and for the officials and for the casual fans too, that are interested in it and trying to learn the game a little bit more and hopefully either get involved in the sport by coaching or officiating to help everybody out with it. So with that, we are going to dive right into the NFHS rule book. Again, Mr. Barlow, thank you once again. You put together this fantastic presentation here that I'm about to share my screen with. And there you go. So diving into the rule book, rule one talks about the game, the field, the players, and the equipment. Now, Daniel, I'm not going to lie. Rule one is a pretty basic rule when it comes to the football officiating world. There's not much that we're really going to find in rule one that is going to be too surprising and things like that. But it does go over basically it's our baseline. Okay. You're talking about from the foundation, building from the foundation up. Well, we got to have these rules in place for the game to be run properly. And so again, a lot of these are going to be some basic type rules. So you'll see in rule one, we're going to be talking about the game itself, the field markings, game equipment, player designations, equipment, field equipment, and some state association adaptations. Not going to really dive into that because that one, again, is very specific to some states, such as the overtime rule. In New Jersey, the overtime rule is different than, say, in Georgia and from other states. So that would be an example of our state rules adaptations. All right, so Daniel, I'm going to pass this one over to you. This one seems like a pretty easy one to start off with. Rule 1-1.
That's where us coaches excel with the basics, with the easy stuff, right? So talking here about the object of the game. Okay, so obviously we know it's to score, but if you've never looked at the rule version of that, carry or pass the ball across the opponent's goal line, kicking the ball through the opponent's goal, of course, field goals or extra points, and then whoever scores the most points wins. Like that seems like a pretty easy one.
Yes,
But it's nice
sir.
to find that in the rule book, because I bet I couldn't have told you before you sent me the slide where that was located, which sounds ridiculous. Game of football, two teams. Obviously, one field, an inflated ball, unless you're Tom Brady. Um, Interval called a down, so we get 4 downs to get a first down, and then how points are scored. Ooh, Mike, what are the 4 ways?
I was going to ask you if you know the four ways. So obviously, you got your touchdown being one. What else?
It's going to be a field goal. It's going
Field
to be
goals
a
too.
safety, and then
Safety
I
is three.
assume defensive touchdown has to be the other one, right?
Touchdown is still a touchdown. So what do you do after you score a touchdown?
Extra points.
There you go. Your try for point.
There we go.
And with that, rule 1-1-3 is each team must start with 11 players, can finish with less, but have to start off with 11. Now, this is specific to 11 on 11 football because, again, talking about specific state adaptations and not only just state, but certain areas, you do have 7-on-7 football, you have 8-on-8 football, tackle football. So there are certain areas, but again, we're talking about the NFHS 11v11 game. So got to start with three, but if unfortunately you have a player get injured or disqualified, or for whatever the reason they can't finish the game out, you can finish with 10. But you still got formation stuff that you do have to abide by when it comes to the rules, specifically on the offensive side.
Is there a minimum number? Can I play with 8?
I'm not going to lie. We've never ever gotten to that. So I don't know that a team is going to, I don't know if a coach is going to allow it, but to my knowledge, there is not a minimum number at that point in time. But we do have the authority as officials to stop the game. So you'll see here on our next slide, the game officials, the referee's authority to rule game officials' decisions are final. So if we have to call a game for a situation like that, we can, and we can designate a winner or a loser in that scenario. So, like I said, I don't know where that has happened, but it's in the rule book, so we do have that ability to do it.
Awesome.
So, talking now about the officials, the game is administered by officials, and once again, here in New Jersey, we're typically 5, 6, or 7-man crews, with one of them being designated as our head referee. Our authority here in New Jersey begins 30 minutes prior to the game. So that is technically when we are in charge. So if there happens to be a pre-game brawl an hour and a half before the game starts, coming off the bus, that's not our jurisdiction. That's not something that we typically are going to be involved in. Now, each area, each state is going to have their rules and regulations. We are typically on the field an hour before the game. That is what our kind of cutoff is, that we want to make sure that we're out on the field during warm-ups an hour before the game while the teams are there so that we can go through our checklist of pre-game type of stuff, making sure equipment is proper and all that stuff. But technically our authority begins 30 minutes before the game and it continues through the end of the game. Now, Daniel, in your area, final whistle blows, horn goes off, whatever it is. The official holds the football up in the air saying game is over. And then what do you typically see the officials do at that point in time?
Run off the field. Get to the locker room as quick as possible.
Hell yes, they do. And that's where a lot of people are tend to get on the officials. Oh, look, they're running out. They're scared. They knew they messed up or whatever it may be. No, at this point in time, our game is over. What happens in the handshake line is between now the schools. That's not something that we're typically officiating. So it actually is to the benefit of the teams and to the players that we're not going to be involved in that, because if we see something that we technically have to eject an individual for, well, now that gets sent up to here and it gets sent up to our state association, and now players can be suspended for particular games. Where if it happens outside of our jurisdiction, We don't know. Now it's on to the schools to take care of it. Now, hopefully, the schools do right by it in that scenario if a fight does break out and who caused it. But once the game is over, technically our jurisdiction has completed, and that's why we kind of hightail it on out of there. Um, Replay for officials is not prohibited. So we do not you do instant replay stuff. Um, Again, state associations do have that in their bylaws that they can be used. We experimented with it here in New Jersey. It kind of went by the wayside. Other states are still using it at the upper levels. And what I mean by the upper levels are your playoffs, your semifinals, your championship games.
And is
And the last one, go ahead.
so so the replay equipment is prohibited. Um, is there any states that have ever looked into like getting that in the regular season, or is it just deemed it doesn't matter?
So here in New Jersey, we were actually the trial state for it being used in the regular season, and it was by select groups. Um, Basically, it was because of the huddle sideline that is now out there that a lot of teams are using. They kind of experimented with it, and what they found is that it wasn't working. Just the number of cameras that were being used at your general high school game, where you got a sideline view from the press box, and then majority of schools now do have the end zone view that they're filming with. But those were the only two requirements at the time. And unless you're getting a play that's happening at the 50-yard line, or you're getting something that's happening in the middle of the field where that end zone camera is set up, we're not getting the proper angles that we need in order
Right.
to truly get that. So now when you get to your state playoffs, it's either being held, especially your championship games, they're typically being held at a neutral site. Most places are at some type of collegiate site where you do have more cameras and more technology available to you. So that's why they're only using it in the postseason and not the
Yeah,
regular season.
that makes sense.
And this one I find interesting. Referees' decisions to forfeit are final, and protests are not recognized, which that one kind of boggles me a little bit. If you're saying that, then why even allow it? Why allow somebody to write a letter to the state? Because we have seen people write letters and challenge official rulings that have then been overturned. And we recently had one here in New Jersey in the wrestling world, which was a big controversy, which was a an elite, like, shoot, the kid might be the number one recruit in the country, was disqualified from the state tournament due to a fight that occurred in the bleachers with family members, and the state deemed him to be disqualified from the rest of the tournament. But the parents took it to the courts, and the courts overruled it. And now, to my knowledge, I don't know if it's completely settled yet to this point, or if they just put like the injunction in it. But the young man ended up going on and being a 4-time state champion, and I mean, he is one of the best wrestlers to ever come out of our state's history. He's one of the top wrestlers in the nation. So we do have stuff like that that does go on.
Is this just protesting against a forfeit, or is this protesting against any ruling? How does that rule read?
So, and that's where the legalese of this, to my knowledge, this is just on the forfeit decision. And again, your forfeit decision can come from a number of different ways. It's very rare that a scenario like this will come to a referee deciding that it's a forfeit. Number of players is typically going to be your most common one, and as we just talked about, that's not very common at all. But we have stopped games due to excessive violence, a lot of penalties occurring. So but I don't think we've necessarily called it then a forfeit. We just stopped the game with 2.5 minutes left, saying, "All right, game's over. What the score
Right.
is what the score is," and we're going from there. And I've never had anybody truly fight it because the coaches see where the game is going and they're kind of in agreement with it.
Well, that's good to know that you can. I mean, I don't know that the protest ever works. I don't know if I've ever seen a ruling changed in football like after the final whistle. You know,
Yeah,
but it's good to know that that ruling is there at least, like only for forfeits, as it
yeah.
reads to me, and as you've said.
So
Talking through the field here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say the next two slides here, we're going to kind of discuss the field area here. So go ahead.
The field is so this is what we start like when we talk to our quarterbacks or I started a like a football academy for the off season to teach kids because there's a lot of stuff they don't know right about the field and not that you really even have to I guess it's so general that I guess you could play your whole career and not know the increments or the measurements of a football field and that would be okay. Hey, run that way really fast, right? Forrest
Yep.
Gump was really good at getting to the end zone and I bet he didn't know that how long he was running. So not too big of an issue. But we do start with this just because I think, like you said, Mike, it's a good foundation. Um, there are states I know of, like Texas, that uses NCAA rules. I'm pretty
hmm
sure their field changes sizes too. Um, yeah, so pretty foundational stuff or fundamental stuff.
Yeah, now when it comes to the difference between the NFHS and the NCAA rules, which is what Texas typically goes by, it's not necessarily the field size, it's the goalpost size. And that's where you're going to see the difference. And coming with the goalpost size from the high school to the college to the pro level is the hash marks. So there's not much of a deviation when it talks about the field itself. Um, Couple of things that we officials will definitely use in different terminologies. We talk about the nines. Okay, the nines are going to be 9 yards to the top of the numbers, and that's when we're talking about with a timeout, with substitutions and things like that. Did the player check into the top of the numbers? So different areas like that. I think at this point everybody knows that the field is 100 yards from goal line to goal line, and then your end zones are going to be another 10 yards. But then we got our restricted areas and different things like that. Another one to take note with is in the high school level is our try at our extra point, our PATs are from the 3 yard line. So you'll see a painted line at 3 yards, hopefully in the middle of the field. But at the NCAA and at the pro level, it's at the 2 yard line. So it does make a difference in that aspect.
I know the restricted area went through a beating the last few years because of COVID season. I don't know what
Yes.
y'all did in Jersey, but I know here in Oklahoma, they went ahead and extended it from goal line to goal line. So that was a
Yes.
really neat year. I mean, the team box and the restricted area for coaches, it went goal line to goal line. So you could be on the goal line down there coaching up your quarterback, and he didn't have to run the 25 yards or 35 yards, whatever, back to you across the field. So definitely something that I think it took them a while to wrangle back in. I don't the
Yes.
next year, the 2020 season was crazy. 2021, I think they started trying to get a hold of it, and it's pretty much back now. But that was a pretty wild one.
Yeah, it was. And we did the same thing here in New Jersey with extending the team box area. So typically your team box area is going to go from 25 to 25. And with the COVID season, to allow for spacing, in essence, for the players to be socially the 6 feet away from each other, they allowed the team box to extend. I don't think here in Jersey we went to the goal line, but we were like close to the 10 yard line. And at that point, if they were at the 8 yard line, the 5 yard line, we weren't really busting chops.
Right.
But that 25 yard line is where your team area needs to be in the box. Now, a big one I do want to talk about is the restricted area. The restricted area is our office as officials. That is the 2 yards where on a turf field you're going to see that big white 2 yard block. That's our area to work, and that is, as it states, restricted. Now, coaches take liberties and walk into that spot. And again, we're pretty liberal in allowing the coaches to go into that spot. But then we ask that when the snap is imminent, you concede and give us that area and step back into the team box because that's where we're running the sidelines.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be on the field of play. Our wing officials, I should say, should not be on the field of play until the ball is dead. So this is our safety area where it's our area to work. And now when we're focusing on the game and on the play, and now all of a sudden you get a long run and we're trying to sprint downfield and officiate behind the play, and bam, we go running into a coach on the sideline. Well, that's typically the area that it occurs in. And a lot of times it can go down as a sideline warning. if there is physical contact, it is a 15-yard penalty. It's supposed to be right away, but again, we understand the game, but give us that area. And please control your players because we saw it in the bowl game this past year. It actually had an effect of a player jumping up and celebrating and running into the official going down the sideline. Was that the Georgia game, if I remember correctly?
I can't remember. I remember seeing highlights of it, but I don't remember specifically which game.
But yeah, so that is we like to refer to that as our office. So please stay out of our office when this play is happening. Between plays, yeah, and we know quarterbacks come to the sidelines to get plays, to get the play call, coaches step out, and we'll typically give them again a little bit of liberty of coming out to the field. Now, if the coach is coming out to the nines, that's a little bit pushing it. So we'll kind of give them a couple of yards off the sideline, but we want to keep them on the sidelines and into the team box as best we can.
For sure.
So moving right along here. All right. Daniel, you want to take these?
Absolutely. Looks like 2-26-2 end lines here, outer limit of each end zone. That being the where your field goal posts are, right? Like, so this is after 10 yards, not the goal line section. Sidelines, lateral limit of the field of play and end zones. And then the goal lines, of course, vertical planes between the field of play and the end zone. The only part that matters is the very first, right? The chalk line. Let's go.
Yep.
And then boundary lines, in lines and sidelines, and out of bounds.
And here's the big one, and you hit on it. The goal line is part of the end zone. So when that ball breaks that plane of that goal line, the front edge of the ball breaks that front edge of the goal line. Well, that's considered a touchdown or a touchback, depending upon what ruling that we're looking at. So here's our basic field markings again: 360 feet, also known as 100 yards by 160 feet. So 120 from end line to end line because you got the 100 yards and then the 10 yards for each end zone. And going across the field is 53 and a third yards. Your field area is going to be the area within our boundary lines, and we're going to talk about that at one of our later ones. If the ball, say, hits one of the sticks, our first down markers, and that's out of play, different things like that. So our field of play is the area within the sidelines and the goal line, and our end zones are 10 yards in depth and located at the ends. And again, the goal line is in the end zone. That is italics. That has the big exclamation point. It is bolded on my screen here. The goal line is part of the end zone. All right. Again, we got some basic ones here. Now, this one we're going to kind of start seeing some state associations, and not only just state associations, but you're going to see some of the local schools be a little bit different with this. But our yard lines, okay, are any lines and its vertical plane parallel to the end line. So you're going to see your 5 yard intervals, your 5, your 10, your 15, and different things like that. The hash marks now are a series of marks parallel to the sideline that divide the field into thirds. They have to have what we call the tick. Okay, the tick is going to be the hash mark that goes perpendicular to that yard line. But now the individual yard line hash marks that we see on the majority of the fields and pretty much every turf field, that's not mandatory.
Okay.
And you'll also sometimes, and you can see in this diagram here, it doesn't have it, those same yard lines along the sidelines. For the purposes of spotting the ball, it makes it so much easier. When we play on these grass fields that don't have any hash marks or anything like that, it becomes a real pain in the butt. And this is where you're going to start seeing more measurements for first downs because some of the field's crowns are so high. There's such a peak in the middle. You can't see on the opposite side. So it does make the game a little bit more difficult to officiate. And then you got your restraining line, which is at least 2 yards from sideline all the way around. Again, that is our restricted area.
The restraining line, is that mandatory? Because I feel like a lot of small schools don't waste that paint and go around with a restraining line. Is that just do you get small enough level that's just an assumed area?
So you should have the restricted area from the 25s painted in.
Of
Um,
course.
and a lot of people that changed probably about 5, 6 years ago, maybe even longer ago, that it was from the 30-yard line. They extended it down to the 25. So if you have an older turf field, you may still see the lines being painted at the 30-yard line. But then the other portion of it, most of the time, you're going to see that as a dashed line. And it's very faint. They may paint it in the beginning of the season on the grass fields, but there are some areas that they don't really have it in there. But it should be there. But again, finances do play a part in it. All right, so these ones we've kind of talked about already. We got our tick marks, we've got our 9-yard marks, which are going to be the top of the numbers. And again, these are not mandatory to have numbers on the field. They do make a world of difference for not only officials, but for coaches of knowing when they're going back and breaking down film, what the down and distances and different things like that. But if anything, you'll still see, and you see it at a lot of practice fields where they're just going to have a box on the field,
For
just
sure.
an area that delineates that it is a yard marker area. And then we're going to have the one line, which is 24 inches in length, 4 inches wide at the 3-yard line for our try for a point. And again, decorative markings, these are all basic things that we're typically not worrying about, but these are a lot of ones that are optional in essence. So your goal lines, your yard lines, which we talked about, which are the marks. Your tick mark should be 4 inches from the sideline because we want to be able to get a true gauge. So the reason it's off the sideline is we want to get a true gauge of where their foot was with the white. So we want to be able to see a little green in between there. If you have any decorative markings or anything like that, or advertisements, basically all yard markers need to be seen. So that's the rulings here. And again, what are we going to do if we come to a field and you can't see all these things? Are we not going to play the football game? No, we're still going to play the game, but we're going to say, hey, coach, listen, this needs to be remedied by the next time. And we're going to notify our assigner. And then the following week, it's going to be the same way.
Yeah, for sure. The decorative mark in the end zone being 2 feet away from the goal line. So that's something that I used to notice. Most end zones, it was like they just shrank the paint, right? You leave 2 yards everywhere. But it kind of feels like that's gone away, especially at the collegiate level. We're just painting white to white now. So what's the reasoning, and is it something that's even kept up with still?
So again, it's because, especially in the end zone, that area of being inbounds to out of bounds makes a huge. Now you're talking points as opposed to a first down or inbounds out of bounds. You're talking touchdown or incomplete. They want to make sure that there is a true designation between what is in the field of play and what's not. The One of the harder things that we've come to with the turf fields evolving is the multi-purpose fields. So now when you've got the soccer fields also being the football field and the lacrosse field, and you've got all these different lines painted on, and there are lines, some back of the end zones have 2 different line markings on it. Pre-game, we're going over like, all right, white is out, blue is in, because sometimes the lacrosse lines might be blue or yellow or whatever it may be.
Right.
But as long as there is a true delineation, so if you paint your end zone and you happen to paint your end zone all white, well, that could be a problem because then we don't have a true marking. But the one thing that we always say is, well, we're switching sides at every quarter, and each team's going into that end zone twice. So again, is there really an advantage gained at that point? Probably not, but we want to call the best game that we can, so we don't want to leave it to a field marking being out of whack.
For sure. All
All
right,
right.
more field areas here. I like that the restricted areas, it looks larger here. Make it bigger. Keep people away. But the 2 yards or more. Team box and coaches area. That's the coaches area. Even here, Mike, it's like almost designated as your previously assigned restricted area for ref. So that is still, even in the rule book, a cloudy spot for us as coaches.
Yep.
We get to come out to the nines at timeout, or if we need to, you know what I mean, a switch in a quarter, or whatever, between kickoff or a touchdown or a point after, and then that kickoff. We're out there talking to our kids, and now we just have to remember to get back. It does get kind of cloudy, and I've seen that be confrontation on the sideline, which is kind of stinks. But the team box obviously very easy, and we got to keep kids in that one. It's nice to see that we have gotten from the 25 to the 25 versus even when it was the 10 to the 10 or whatever COVID rules. That was just too much. Like you need just get people away at some points. I'm sure some coaches liked it. When you have 100 kids on the sidelines, that's probably a little different than our small school mentality where it's, you might have 50 kids on the team.
Yeah, and one of the bigger issues that we've had here, and you're talking about small schools and different things like that. Sometimes the team box area is really tiny because they're trying to get this football field into an area between some fences or some woods and stuff like that, and it's really, really narrow. And then you got the track that's going on behind it and things like that. So
Yeah,
that tends to push the players forward. And then when the players get pushed forward, the coaches get pushed forward, and all of a sudden now we got nowhere to run or to move on the sidelines. So one of the big things that we like to do is we like to talk to our chain gang. We like to put the chain gang at the back of the coaches area. So A, for their safety and for the player safety if a play comes off there, but it's also a great gauge for the team to see, okay, the chain's there, I need to be behind them. Now, coach, you want to step out, make your call, step back in, clear that area when the snap's imminent. So kind of all works in conjunction with each other.
for sure.
Um, we've had to stop games because long first down, chain crew is trying to run, teams in a 2 minute drill. We're not able to really get the play going until at least the yard marker, the down marker is set, and all of a sudden the team's forcing our chains to go around, and all of a sudden our chains snap. And now we have to stop the game because we have an equipment malfunction on the sideline because of something silly like that. So it does have an effect on the game. Typically you want it to be policed on our own. My white hat, he leaves that solely up to our sideline guys. He's like, listen, don't tell me. I don't want to hear about the sidelines. You take care of your sidelines. If you got to bang them for a flag, bang them. I'll talk to them, but like, let's play football.
For sure.
All right. So our basic field markings, and I don't know that anybody. I'll be honest with you here, Daniel. If I were to walk up to a group of officials and say, "Hey, how high is the pylon?" I don't know that they'd be able to tell you that, to be honest with you. But they are typically 18 inches high, 4 inches square, orange, red, or yellow. One thing they do have to be is they have to be soft. They can't be a hard cone because you got kids diving at it. And then your yard line markers are soft, pliable. I mean, no closer to 5 yards. And if you see a good officiating crew, they are typically going out and moving them pregame, backing them off the sidelines because, well, the worst one is the goal line where they put the G right next to the pylon. And now all of a sudden you see an official kind of standing there straddling a yard marker and stuff like that with a
Right.
sweep coming their way. And now they're tripping over that yard marker. So that should be 5 yards back. But again, size wise and different things like that, I don't know that you're going to get anybody to really know those answers. But it's in the rule book, so we got to talk
That's all
about it.
right. Coaches don't know the size of the football. So, we couldn't tell you the exact measurements of a ball. You can't tell us the exact measurements of pylon. We're good.
Okay, so we're even.
We're all even.
All right, your goal posts. So Daniel, I'll ask you this question because I know that I've seen it. This diagram here of our goalpost, this looks pretty symmetrical. Have you ever seen them a little cattywampus where they're on one type of angle?
Yeah, well, it's we deal with a lot of things, especially small school ball. We measured ours out a few years ago, and they weren't, 120 yards apart. Like we've dealt with all kind. They're not square to each other, which means the field is put in weird. Um, yes, that I've seen a lot of things. It seemed like there was an entire genre or era of goalposts that mounted to the crossbar mounted to the upright pole with some type of round bracket, and so they would
Yep.
get loose and start leaning one way, right? Like, um, yeah, I've seen all sorts of weird things.
I've seen goalposts that kind of go out in a V instead of straight up and down. So Um, again, we do have rules for them. They do need to be 23.4 inches apart. They should be the bottom of the goalpost should be 10 feet off the ground. And then it is recommended that they are 10 feet up. Um, I've seen smaller ones. I mean, I'm not going to lie. They should be padded with at least 6 feet of padding above because, you know, go to the Canadian Football League where you got the goalpost in the middle of the end zone, you still do have kids that are running to the back of the end zone, and you still do have goalposts that are also soccer goals too. So you instead of having the one center goal, you're going to have two that are coming straight down. So they do need to be padded for the kids' protection.
So he talks about here at the bottom, permissible to use different fields with different dimensions. I assume like the Patriots host the state championship game, they don't have to change out their field goal post. Is that just considered fair play because both teams have the same advantage or disadvantage?
Yep. So that's exactly what it is. So a couple years ago, when I got to work a state championship game, we were up at Rutgers University. So goalposts, we couldn't do anything about the goalposts. Both teams had the same slightly narrower goalposts. So just like you're talking about, if it's at a professional league. What we did talk about, and we talked about it with both coaches before the game, is the hash marks. One team not only played vertically, but they played perpendicularly. So they asked, can we go to the outside of the collegiate hash marks to kind of simulate more of where the high school game was, as opposed to just being from hash mark to hash mark? And we conferred with the other team and gave them the rationale. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Just as long as you're consistent with for both teams. So that was something that we used. But for the rest of the games that weekend that were played at Rutgers, I think they stayed inside the collegiate hash marks and didn't widen out like we did. But we just used the outside of the mark. I'm like, I'm not walking off 2 yards for a play that ends up out of bounds. We'll give you a wider landmark, but to keep it consistent. So that's what
Yeah.
we did. All right, some other basic field equipment that you'll see out there is your football. Duh. Vince Lombardi started off his speeches. This is a football. Well, I think we're at that point where we don't need Mr. Vince to come back and do it. You have our old school style kicking tee here, our straight on toe ball kicking tee here, and we got our chain markers, which we're going to kind of talk into a little bit. So, Dan, you want to take over a football here?
Absolutely. Tan colored, unless you have a really good football guy that gets it mudded up and it's nice and chocolate brown, you know.
Yes, sir.
Leather or rubber. I can't tell you the last time we played rubber in high school. I don't know that I've ever seen one actually. I know that like the youth league, sometimes smaller school will have the rubber footballs. I assume just for price.
Mm-hmm.
8 or 12 evenly spaced laces, which was neat to me that they have, kind of a variable there. When I read through this, that was one of the things that stood out to me. Like it's not all just have a certain amount of laces. Like nope, you can have this variation, kind of a range. Continuous 1 inch stripe, white or yellow, only on two panels of the ball. So the two panels that are nearest the laces. So it should be half the football has got the stripes. 12.5 to 13.5 psi. Once again, we'll go back to Deflategate. Does the temperature matter? Are the refs checking it if the temperature drops 20 degrees in the middle of a football game to make sure the PSI is the same? I doubt it. Right? As long as it checks pregame, you're good.
Yes.
And then the NFHS authenticating mark. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I didn't realize it had to be marked like that. We just buy the high school Wilson ball, but I can't say I've ever paid attention to exact markings.
So if your school is going out and purchasing, the vendors know that they have to be those particular balls. So the first one, option one, it kind of goes right around where your air nozzle is going to be. That's why you got the circular one. And the other one is just going to be kind of a branded stamp that's on the side. And again, without truly looking for it, you're not going to notice it. You see a
Right.
football, you see the Wilson, you see the swoop, the swoosh for if it's a Nike ball or whatever it may be. I mean, other than that, you're not really looking for stuff. Now, when it comes to us as officials, we do take a gander at this. I could tell you the PSI level. I don't have a gauge. I don't have the PSI meter. I don't know many football officials that do. I know they do it in basketball because the bounce of the ball does make a difference with it. But for the PSI, uh, we the kicking ball is going to be the only one that I'm really going to truly make a judgment on. Because if the kid hands me a kicking ball that's a big old balloon, that's going to be the one I'm going to say no, you can't really use this one. I had a team that threw the ball 40, 50 times a game. The kid liked the ball deflated, which to me is harder to throw. And another team, their kicker came out with a brand new football that was rock solid. And I'm like, This just kind of seems backwards, but that's just my personal preference, which means absolutely nothing right now. So
So, couple things. I know wide receivers like to catch a less inflated ball because they can get a little more grip on it, right? It makes them look a little better. It's
yes,
kind of the modern day stick 'em is just to have the ball a little lower, especially when it gets cold and everything hurts. One thing that we faced in our area, and I'll probably get blackballed for even talking about this, but some people are filling their kicking balls with helium or nitrogen to get the extra distance. And from what I understand, it makes a very discernible noise. It almost tings when you kick it, or if you were to punch it or whatever. And there's people getting 3 to 5 yards out of their kicker extra just by what gas they fill it in. Is there any rule book thing that says you can't use those?
my knowledge, no. And this is the first that I'm hearing of it, but yeah, I mean, people are always looking for ways around it. Now, the one thing that I could say is that should only be on a kickoff because that's the only time that you're able to use a true kicking ball is on the kickoff. Teams are trying to swap balls for extra points and for field goals, and that's the game ball. So there is no kicking ball when it comes to that. So gaining those extra 3 to 5 yards for a long field goal, that's not going to help them. But the touchback is the best kickoff coverage in football. So if you got a kicker that's putting the ball in the end zone consistently, that does make a difference. Um, so no, I'm going to have to pay attention to that one myself because I don't even. How am I going to test that?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I don't think there's a rule against it. So what would you
Yeah.
be testing for? Like you've done nothing wrong. So all you high school coaches trying to get that extra little distance out of your kicker, maybe helium is the answer. Get a tank of helium in there.
So I guess I'm going to need to bring a pin and put the pin in and suck in some of the air. And if my
If it
voice goes
changes
like
your
this,
voice,
then I know that ball's illegal. I
there you go.
yeah, I don't know how we're gonna modify that one, but that's a good one to bring up at my meeting. So
I do like permissible markings being listed here because back in the day we all had to Sharpie our school name on our football to
yep.
make sure it didn't get stolen. And then now for an extra $20 or $30, whatever, you can get your logo put on there, or it's a bargaining chip to get you to use a certain team's ball, get your logo put on there, which is nice. Except now when coaches steal it to add to their collection, they just have a better looking version of your own football. You know what I mean? So hey, look at my high tech version of stolen football. We have I think it's Arkansas here requires the Wilson football be used in the state championship game. I don't know about playoffs exactly, but I know when they get into those like neutral site, the higher, when kind of all the chips are on the table, it has to be a Wilson football. Are you aware of that anywhere else? And is there, should coaches get ready for that? Or are we going to start looking for that to be so that we get one quality of football?
So they've talked about using basically a neutral ball, which I know the NFL does do and stuff like that, where they give the ball to the teams a little bit in advance. But we're still at a point. I mean, finances still plays a major role in our game where they. I haven't heard anything here in New Jersey of them using just a neutral type of ball for both teams. Um, and going back to what you were talking about a good equipment guy who likes to mud up the ball and stuff like that. We have a team in our area that is a triple option team,
Oh
and
yeah.
they have the best equipment guy out there because their mudded up ball, it's still tan, but their jerseys are black. Their home jerseys are black, and the balls are so mudded up. To me, I don't know if they do this on purpose, but it was just something that I took note of it this year, so I wouldn't be surprised. The ball's very dark,
Yeah.
and when you're hiding the ball, when you got riding the side, and you don't know who's got the ball, it makes a difference in that aspect. But I don't know that anybody's ever ruled the ball to be illegal in that scenario, being too dark. All right, so here's our ball continued. Each team shall supply at least one legal ball to the referee. Referee's got final approval. I'm going to tell you 99% of the time this is going to fall upon the umpire in the pregame aspect of it. The umpire is going to examine the equipment and the ball. Only legal and approved balls may be used, and the choice of balls for a free kick or to start a new series. And any official may order the ball to be changed between downs. Now, this when we're talking about a rain game and different things like that, we're going to try to swap out the balls as much as possible. Again, my crew, we are very liberal. If you give me three balls pregame to mark and check, and it's a downpour, and all of a sudden another ball comes out, as long as it's got the true markings on it, we're playing football with it. I'm not going to sit there and bust chops with it. We do try to. I keep a towel on me. We do try to swap the balls out as much as we can. We do recommend having a good ball boy and having them run the ball out, because there are some officials that can't catch a cold, let alone catch a football. So when you're trying to throw that football to the middle of the field and the official drops it and it gets in the mud and dirt, well, that could be a disadvantage. So things like that. All right, some other
Well, I got to
game
ask real quick
equipment.
on that one, Mike. We just got done talking about a helium football. A free kick is a free kick is a free kick. So if I want to kick a field goal with my helium ball, this says that I do get the choice of ball to free kick. So is that a field goal or a punt? If I want to punt the ball an extra 5 yards,
A free kick is a kickoff. Scrimmage kick is what you're talking about.
there we go. Okay, see,
So,
that's why I have the man in my back pocket.
so yes, your free kick are going to be your kickoffs, and then your scrimmage kicks are your punts and your extra points.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying the rule there.
Absolutely.
Due to the length of today's episode, we have split it into 2 episodes. Tune in next week for part 2 of Rule 1 of the NFHS rulebook here on Whistle Talk.
If you're enjoying today's show and you want to show your appreciation to Mike D, you can buy him a beer by clicking on the link in the show notes or go to buymeacoffee.com/Mike D the referee. And as always, make sure to click follow and give 5 stars. Thanks for listening. Cheers.